Ever since first appearing in 2001's Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, arguably none of creator Hideo Kojima's other characters have attracted as much attention or feverish obsession as the shadowy Illuminati-like cabal at the heart of world events in the Metal Gear universe, the Patriots. This is a video essay all about the Patriots. We'll be covering them like only Futurasound Productions could, giving up the ghost on everything you've ever wanted to know about them, and maybe even the things you don't. Let's go.
Betrayed you?
I wouldn't quite put it that way. I wanted power. They sought destruction.
But why stoop to terrorism?
I wanted absolute power.
But you're the president. You have power.
No, I'm just a figurehead.
What?
I don't have any control. The real power is in the Patriots' hands. The truth behind this country.
The Patriots?
I'm not surprised you've never heard of them. Very few are aware of their existence, even among those with code word clearance.
Huh?
Politics, the military, the economy, they control it all. They even choose who becomes president. Putting it simply, the Patriots rule this country.
No.
Hard to believe, isn't it? But it's the truth. The space defense, income tax reduction, and national missile defense programs. Every policy that's been credited to me was actually done according to their instructions.
Space defense was initiated by Congress.
That's what the Patriots want the country to believe. It's all a show. Democracy is just a filler for textbooks. Think about it. Do you actually believe that public opinion influences the government?
No.
This country is shaped and controlled as the Patriots see fit. The people are shown what they want to believe. What you call government is actually a well-staged production aimed at satisfying the public.
Huh?
Don't look at me like that. I'm legally sane, you know.
It's not your sanity that worries me.
The Patriots. Even I don't know who the actual members are. Are they financial, political, or military leaders? No one knows who the Patriots really are. Even my instructions come from a cutout. All I've been told is that every key decision is made by a group of 12 men, known as the Wise Men's Committee.
Your office? The White House?
Merely puppets, pawns in a game. By pledging my loyalty, an insignificant son of a senator was awarded the presidency. Of course, that wasn't the only price I had to pay.
What do you mean?
Even if a pawn becomes a queen, it is still just a playing piece. I wanted to leave my own mark in history, but my ambitions were... You'll understand someday.
To give a comprehensive overview of the history of the Patriots would take one of the entire series. Since that's beyond our focus here, let's make do with something extremely basic and vague, shall we? In Metal Gear, the Patriots refer to a secret organization that more or less are the status quo that every Metal Gear game tasks you, however begrudgingly, with upholding, or as Metal Gear Solid 4 put it in 2008, protracting. Usually the events of a Metal Gear title have the vibe of some kind of twisted science or psychology experiment. The Patriots, or some analog, tend to be the ones behind the tinted observation glass. Typically, Metal Gear presents a kind of philosophical yin and yang approach, with the Patriots as avatars for faceless, globalized, neo-imperial governance on the one hand, and the given game's main antagonist force as the don't tread on me, live free, die hard anti-government rebels on the other. To be ultra-reductive, we could roughly compare this to the left versus right dichotomy in traditional American domestic politics, but let's not take this too far. Because among a few other crucial reasons, the Patriots are not really any more left-wing than right when you get down to it. They are said to utterly control both political parties in America, and anyone who thinks that the Patriots really stand for any one thing or embody any one particular human value or core belief system, anyone beyond themselves anyway, I don't think understands their true malevolence, nor their power. The Patriots, you see, are at bottom a program. It has one function, one reason, one goal: total power and total control. They are a system, and within that system, they are all things. The totality of left and right, X and Y. This is the great enduring repetitious irony in Metal Gear games. The don't tread on me villains are such byproducts or children of the system that they're fighting that they're really just another side or aspect to the Patriots' world, just more of its terrible children. These are always Civil War stories and family feuds. Metal Gear was made at a time, after all, when the American socio-political model seemed to have scored some kind of final total victory, as though it was all that would ever be.
Seizing Arsenal Gear was never the real objective.
What was your objective then?
A list of names of the Patriots! They were planning to extend their control to digital information flow with GW and Arsenal. That means the information they want to filter out is contained in GW, including that list of the highest 12 members of the Patriots Wiseman's Committee.
And once you knew who they were, you would cross out their names one by one, while we, with our useless arsenal, drew their fire.
Very good.
You were using us all along.
Were you any different?
But your plans hit a snag with GW destroyed, hasn't it?
Even those who opposed America on this or that particular basis, even terrorists or other radical extremists, almost all did so, and debatably still do, within the, as it were, American tradition. After all, this was a crucial part of the relevance of the historical outfit, the Sons of Liberty, to MGS2. The real Sons of Liberty were what some not only could, but have called terrorists. They used both symbolic and actual violence to intimidate dissenters into silence, mainly by targeting civilians and the press, apart from the odd British tax collector. It's complicated, but if you want to understand the idea of the Patriots as a series of norms, that goes back to the significance of the American Revolution as a war fought according to the terms declared to the world by the original Patriots, meaning the founding revolutionary faction of American colonials. To justify their war and legitimize their claims of authority and independence, the Patriots appealed to so-called self-evident inalienable rights and values, according to the rationalist humanist tradition of the Enlightenment. This got a ball rolling that would utterly transform global politics by the early 20th century. And it's then, of course, that we learn in the prequel origin story, MGS3, that the predecessor to The Patriots was born. This was a group called the Philosophers, and it was made up of key members representing 3 states: China, America, and the Soviet Union. The saga of Metal Gear starts there. Across the series, the Philosophers would beget a group called Cypher, who then beget the Patriots, and with them, the Information Age. The saga then ends up by the events of the last game chronologically, Metal Gear Solid 4, depicting how the digital revolution the Patriots spearheaded forged an illusion of peace built on endless privatized proxy warfare, and one that threatened to trap all of humanity in a brain-dead digital prison. A zombie world drained not just of violent warfare, but all true life. Throughout the series, we observe indirectly how the spirit of the original group, the Philosophers, and their hubristic visions for so-called world peace influenced the direction for generations of science and technology. This spans everything from game theory and AI to microbiology, the digital revolution, and the rise of genetic engineering, not to mention more cutting-edge fields mentioned by Metal Gear Solid 5 like reverse evolution. But what's key to understanding the backstory for the Patriots that MGS3 provides, maybe to understanding them generally, is knowing a bit about the rise of something during the World Wars and the Cold War, something I'll call the Wisemen. That name comes from a real and specific group, but before I tell you about them, let's talk Wisemen generally. Whether generals, just non-elected advisors, or bureaucrats, by the early 60s setting for MGS3, the American government had put a massive amount of power in the hands of a very few number of people. These people, these so-called wise men, how they thought and what they did could influence even major world events. From individuals acting behind the scenes to so-called think tanks like the Rand Corporation, even those without any notable public office position outside the voters' power to dislodge or even to know about. People like that could, after the end of World War II, find themselves directly shaping American policy. This borderline anti-democratic development within the machinery of American politics lies at the heart of the Patriots as a concept, going all the way back to their debut in Metal Gear Solid 2. So that's the Patriots as far as Metal Gear itself goes, but it wouldn't be Metal Gear without a ton of inspiration taken from the real world. There may be no other group in Metal Gear, and this is really saying something, with more outside connections and little insider references than the Patriots. What? So let's try to break their code, shall we? To begin with, they're not what you'd call human. The Patriots are an idea. They're a paradigm, a style of rule and social structure. They date back largely to the Enlightenment, but their true origins go back further. The Patriots, alongside the Enlightenment and the American Revolution, all owe their existence to a little book from ancient Greece, The Republic by the philosopher Plato. Plato held that the perfect state could only come about by creating a ruling caste of enlightened philosophers to guide and guard it. In short, Plato thought it was all just a question of education. Running a society, surely, he reasoned, was just another kind of applied science. By having for its rulers true philosophers, a word meaning lovers of truth or knowledge, Plato's utopia would run not according to politics, but according to the way things truly ought to be. Only such virtuous and impartial people as philosophers, or in modern parlance we might say scientists, Plato believed could be trusted or would prove truly capable as the ruling elite. After Plato came the Jesuits, founded by Saint Ignatius Loyola et al. In 1534. This religious order of monks fought the Counter-Reformation against Protestants by the doctrine the ends justify the means. They would inspire the former Jesuit and law professor Adam Weishaupt in 1776 to found the Bavarian Perfectibilists, a secret society more widely known today, of course, as the Illuminati. The Illuminati, slightly ahead of the French Revolution, around the same time as the American one, sought to deify reason, replacing Christianity with science, to build an entire society around the same observable principles as, say, physics or chemistry.
This is Karen Hojo reporting from Ellis Island. The effects of last night's incident are apparent even here. The Statue of Liberty made the long trip from France to Liberty Island in 1886 as a birthday present, if you will, on the centennial of our independence. She now stands in front of the Immigration Museum.
The first Sons of Liberty, which you'll remember refers to the founding American patriots or revolutionaries who won independence from Britain, gave France an empirical model for how something like an Illuminati-style society could take over in a violent coup and set itself up without collapsing. A few years after the French Revolution, in 1835, French philosopher Alexis de Tocqueville wrote Democracy in America, an analysis of this as of yet relatively exemplary democracy, the United States. Hailing American society as a grand experiment, Tocqueville anticipates that America's brand of democracy and culture will spread like wildfire, given how relatively easily it seems to accommodate something like inclusion and diversity. He makes one noteworthy prophetic warning, though, that it seems the Anglo-American race is, quote, called by a secret design to hold in its hands one day the destinies of half the world, end quote. The race that Tocqueville predicted would hold the other half? The Russians.
Thank you for your compliment.
And it would be the rivalry or conflict between America and Russia that would inform pretty much every decision that the wise men would in the 20th century come to make. I'll close this section with an extended quote by Tocqueville that I think speaks to Metal Gear quite a lot. Quote, "A time will come when you will be able to see in North America 150 million men equal to one another, who all belong to the same family, who will have the same point of departure, the same civilization, the same language, same religion, same habits, same mores, and among whom thought will circulate with the same form and will be painted with the same colors. All the rest is doubtful, but this is certain. Now here is a fact entirely new in the world, and imagination itself cannot grasp its import." End quote. Alexis de Tocqueville, Democracy in America. Out of the conflict between Russia and America, as hard as it is to believe, our entire world today owes its existence more or less to just 6 friends operating in that conflict: the wise men, 2 bankers, 2 lawyers, and 2 diplomats. These are the men who sold the world, the so-called architects of the American century. It's repeatedly explained that the Patriots ultimately, as I've said, are actually just a set of norms, a program which make our whole world run. The originators depicted throughout the saga merely built the foundation for those norms, that global social system of ours, and first press start. The idea is that the Patriots have worked their way into us on practically every level, so much so that they've disappeared into the very words and ideas and practices that we've come to rely on as citizens of their world. The wise men, or as they were also called by the 1960s, the old wise men, were responsible for, among other things, keeping America's leaders convinced that the Vietnam War and aggressively deterring communism were both worth sending tens of thousands of young American men to kill and die for. The wise men are worthy of the satirizing that Hideo Kojima provides them for being in effect, debatably, a death knell for the founding principles of American democracy. As Walter Isaacson's fawning biography, The Wise Men, puts it itself, quote, "For a few years, right after the war, a small band of men controlled American policy, and they did it relatively immune from politicians," end quote. A nice way of saying that the wise men, these 6 friends who built, bought, and sold our world, did not do so with the consent of the governed. To the contrary, as conveyed satirically in Kojima's founding organization for global governance in Metal Gear, the philosophers or wise men, the first of many biblical references and quotes surrounding this group, infamously said to have been present in the beginning at the creation of our world. These wise and learned men, all of them to a man from Washington and Wall Street, they believed not only that they knew best, they had the means, the opportunity, and the motive, also the sheer gall, to actually force their interpretations down America's throat, like it or not. Well, I suppose that's simplifying things tremendously. The wise men, to begin with, innovated a whole new era in American foreign policy, one with many different wise men by the end, not all of them always in agreement, nor always advocating the same positions over time. Much like the Patriots, what we're describing here is a system. Not just one person or position, but a multitude. But what makes them all the wise men, beginning with those 6 originators of the paradigm, members of a common ancestral tree, makes them basically competing variations on a single theme. That theme? The creation of a US-dominated global order defined by free trade, open societies, and yet in cases like, say, the crucial importance of the oil industry in the Middle East, or continuing the Cold War in secret, contrary to the express legally mandated will of the American electorate, well, in these cases, society grows a lot less open for the wise men, insofar as only the wise men among us even typically know, often enough, what it is we should have a say in, and don't, or what's being done in our name yet beyond our need to know. Metal Gear Solid since the very beginning was about warning us that man is a species which has obtained far too great a power concentrated in too few hands, which we, use to build our so-called societies. Ours, Metal Gear Solid 5 reminds us, is a society which murders the innocent. No one small cabal, no matter how enlightened or full to bursting with founding fathers, has the right, I'd say Metal Gear says, to think anything can justify mass murder, especially an idea of our own latent superiority. Unlike the wise men, let alone rival analogs to be found in, say, the dead empires of Russia or Germany or Japan, likewise dating all the way back to the Second World War, Metal Gear advocates against Machiavellian ends justify the means zero-sum logic. The wise men were founded in the wake of a war that they, in a fetal, ad hoc, embryonic form, helped steer America towards. And they were founded to begin a new one, even if World War II was very much a war worth fighting. The Wise Men's Committee was founded essentially to begin a new war, a Cold War, to redefine the very concept of war in people's minds. Nukes had brought on a so-called revolution in military affairs, as the Soviets were first to notice in 1962, And in this new era, shaped by the absolutely unacceptable yet ever-present existential threat posed by nuclear weapons and the wise men's doctrine of mutually assured destruction, conflict like the proxy wars in Indochina, or the sort of sectarian ones between different parts of Africa that was going on in the mid to late 20th century. War in these forms was becoming arguably more peaceful, or at least so the world thought, than the 1940s. And another Wiseman contribution to our history, the dawning of the information age, in the mythic retelling by Metal Gear, the secret rulers of our society brought about to forever control and alter the flow of information in all its myriad forms, from gene to meme, cell to whole civilization. By Metal Gear Solid 5, these architects of our pseudo-reality begin to toy with the very makeup of our beings, until by the events of Metal Gear Solid 4, this world's version of the Wisemen become a kind of disease cult, hell-bent on spreading their particular pathogens the world over. Ironically, the Soviet Union proved a fairly close ally to America during the war, thanks in part to the Wisemen, whose diplomatic ties to Russia gave them their sense of authority over future U.S.-Russian relations. During the war, the Wisemen cut their teeth as deal-makers, as movers and shakers, and not just between the Allies and America, but also inside America, too, if not more so. They'd broker deals, find arrangements, get two sides to agree. They'd help set the agenda, decide what to build and where to bomb. The Wisemen got their name by becoming indispensable assets, whoever was president. But it goes deeper. The Wisemen found themselves, and the friends and associates forming their informal insiders' social network, well placed following the war, even more so than they had been at the start. These indispensable sages were trusted to have the nation's best interests at heart. Yet the assumption this makes implicit is there's only one right answer to every question. Judging what's best depends on context. From even before the war officially began, the Wisemen were no neutral, useful tools. They were themselves, in fact, political actors. They had their own agenda, a mission. To the contrary, it was we the people and the president who were unwittingly serving as their tools. In February 1941, a full 10 months ahead of Pearl Harbor, and just 1 month into FDR's term, Lovett and McCloy were already working to get FDR to double the size of America's Air Force. This is during peacetime. The deals the group set up were often quid pro quo, favor for a favor. The Wisemen leaned on their upbringing in prep schools and at places like the Skull and Crossbones Club at Yale, just as they relied on high-profile contacts that they made along the way. By so doing, they aspired to determine the fate of America and the world, to make a reality what Time magazine in 1941 envisioned as the American century. Aspired and achieved. Lovett could, even before the war, get companies working on more planes, even before securing the requisite government contracts or funds. He had, in other words, a blank check, and he, like the other Wisemen, spoke with America's voice, had America's authority backing practically every decision. You might say the Wisemen clique were literally betting America would enter the war. Lovett and James Forrestal, in a very Metal Gear Solid 1 move, secretly arranged to circumvent the public's will or knowledge by having his old Yale buddy, the head of Pan Am Airlines, build secret government Air Force bases in South America. These would be useful, quote, as way stations for U.S. planes flying to Africa in the coming global conflict. This was paid for using the president's black budget without FDR's knowledge. When told this could have consequences should America fail to enter the war, Forrestal reportedly said, "I'll take my chances." Lovett also fostered what's known as a revolution in military affairs regarding the strategic bomber. Being only interested in power, Lovett looked at the new revolutionarily inhumane and destructive technique of fascist warfare, namely aerial bombardment, and took notes. Lovett liked that a long-range bomber could not only make trench warfare obsolete, but inspire the sort of overwhelming, almost religious terror in a people that led Picasso to famously paint La Guernica, a depiction of the effects of such an air raid during the Spanish Civil War. Unlike the rank-and-file military brass, the Wisemen, with their WASP, cosmopolitan, Ivy League, upper-crust backgrounds, could not just think outside the box. They took it as a given that, as members of the ruling caste, the world and the future would be in their hands. Lovett imposed his air power doctrine over the entire military, and it directly paved the way for Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Lovett inadvertently defined an RMA well himself by saying, when arguing his case for the strategic bomber to the Secretary of War, quote, "At irregular intervals in history, some new development has altered the art of war and changed the fate of peoples and the world," end quote. He was trying to educate Secretary Stimson on the British mode of things, which for much of the war would serve the wise men as the very model of propriety. Such was their upbringing as American elites at the turn of the century. Quote, "The German people can be given their first searing lesson in the heart of their hitherto untouched homeland that crime does not pay. This should reduce their will to fight." Lovett, University Club in New York City, 1941. Whenever adjusting public perceptions proved necessary, the wise men were great at, in Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld's words, getting the best information fast. Fast and first.
What is that supposed to mean?
Nothing means nothing.
I believe what you're about to hear will help you understand.
To justify something, a story would be planted, say in Life magazine or maybe the New York Times. A ball would get rolling, and before you knew it, these human engineers, these wise men, would have a justification for the course of action that they first chose. This kind of skullduggery is, of course, no stranger to any American watching this who lived through the early 2000s. But I digress.
So? So what?
Now it gets interesting.
But here's what many people don't seem to get about the Patriots. They may be based in part on real historical groups like the so-called Wise Men's Committee, a group of 6 very well-connected insiders who collectively helped shape American foreign and domestic policy for much of the 20th century, but the concept animating the Patriots is actually less political than it may seem. Ultimately, Hideo Kojima specializes in what's called speculative fiction. The Patriots are the prime example of that. The point isn't so much, in other words, to claim that any such group truly exists or needs to even exist for Kojima's games to still be brilliant, but rather to show us that if they did, we would never know the difference. Whether or not something like the Patriots exists is sort of irrelevant when you think about it, in the face of the sheer fact that such an entity could exist to begin with. Understanding that, I think, is crucial to understanding why Kojima matters as a major innovator in the field of speculative fiction.
After Big Boss's betrayal, Zero could no longer believe in something so uncertain as life. He lost his belief in everything. Nations, organizations, individuals. Zero was no longer willing to place his organization in the hands of the next generation. Instead, he set up a network of AIs, a decision-making system formed from all the information he had accumulated. He built 4 AIs, GW, TJ, AL, and TR, as sort of a digital Mount Rushmore, and 1 core artificial intelligence to unite them, John Doe.
GW. The same GW we destroyed 5 years ago.
The same. Ever since GW was cut off, JD and the other 3 AIs have controlled all information on every aspect of global society. Economics, politics, law, morals, and culture. The war economy is no exception. In the shadow of the system and its complete control over the world, Big Boss isn't allowed to live or die. He's trapped for eternity in a brain-dead prison. To bind himself to his friend, to ensure his rule over the world, Zero transformed Big Boss into an icon, neither living nor dead.
Sounds almost like a religion.
Everything you see today stems from their Cold War. Differences in race, in religion, in ideology. This war they've caused is no different from any other human error in history. It all started with a tiny fork in the path and grew into a great rift.
In the end, love him, hate him, see him as real life or just as fantasy, there's no denying the Patriots helped a lot to make Kojima's signature stealth sci-fi series the masterpiece of paranoid, dark speculative fiction that it is. Well, that does it for this video. Hope the Patriots are a little easier for you to understand now. Until next time, boss.
I hear it's amazing when the famous purple stuffed worm in Flapjaw space with the tuning fork does a raw blink on Harry Carey rock. I need scissors. 61. Infiltrate the enemy fortress. Outer heaven. Destroy the final weapon. Metal Gear. Actually, there is something I have been meaning to tell you, but I just couldn't. I think you should know, though. On Saturday morning last week, I saw a guy leaving Rosemary's room. How should I put it? It was like they were intimate. I'm sorry. Sorry to bring this up during the mission, but President Baker should be somewhere to the south of where you blasted through the wall. Hurry and save him before the terrorists discover his code. 他们是这是不提诺诺比巴什，他的亚马不顾尊我，苏苏米的他的要让必须的托努力，杨信自杀，他负担他回来没有跟过去。